Okay, 1937 Cord, Beverly model. Beverly model had a bustle back trunk. The Westchester model had a fastback trunk. This has got a bustle back trunk. Folding headlights from the factory. Hood that opens like modern day hoods, way ahead of its time. It has a frame in it that was a bolt-on frame like General Motors has today, or cars up in, that started in the 60s and 70s. You could take that frame and, with some modifications, bolt on a Tornado or a Cadillac Eldorado frame. It's a frame stub just like General Motors has made for quite a few number of years. So this car, basically, they made about 2,400 of them from 1936 to 1937. The car, as far as cars went, conventional cars of the era, this car is about 8 inches lower. This car from the factory has no running boards, suicide doors on the front, conventional doors on the back. All the doors, they're functional, they open and close. The mechanisms are inside of it. The windshield, these things sticking out here. There's a crank and the mechanisms are in there. They're not working right at the moment, but again, needs work. But the windshield will go out in a fashion like that, and it runs on this, and that rolls up inside. If you're going to modify this car, it's quite easy to put a modern day windshield in there. The frame and everything is right in there. You just put your urethane in there and put your windshield in. It's got, most cars of the era had one air vent in them. This car's got two, one for passenger, one for drivers. So that's a little bit of a bonus there. You've got, this car has got what they call a pontoon fender, slope back to the back. The back one, if you match the two, they're designed to equal each other. The car was specifically, it was designed by a designer, Gordon Burig, so the car was, you know, very much ahead of its time design-wise and appearance-wise. Go around to the back, you've got two taillights which are recessed into the body, which is pretty unique for a 1937 car. So if you're modifying again, that work is already done. Trunk, this is a bustle back. Like I say, they had two models, a bustle back and a fastback model. Really what they did was they took a fastback and they just grafted this trunk bustle onto it. So it's on, and it's got a wood framework, and it's basically let it in. So people have been known to put the bustle on a fastback and take the bustle off of a bustle back. So it's a preference thing, more or less. But the trunk is different on a fastback than it is on a bustle back. It doesn't have the slope here. It's just a flat trunk going back. Again, trunk more or less a conventional of the era. But here's your gas filler, which on cars of the era, they're sticking out someplace on the side or on the side of the body, mainly out of the side of the fender. This was already been recessed in, so your gas filler is flush with the body. That was kind of the general idea of this whole car, was everything flowing lines. Now if you look, even if you were to look at the wheel, this car, when General Motors made the Oldsmobile Tornado, they actually took a cord apart, and if you have the original drivetrain in it, there is some axle stuff with minor modifications. You can put Tornado axles on the original cord front end. Even the wheels look similar. If you look at a Tornado wheel, the holes in it, it's a similar wheel. So again, rear door. When the car was made originally, they had a lot of aluminum, and that's an original piece of aluminum sill plate. These are all here, but you know, in poor condition. But the car used a lot of aluminum originally in the engine components, particularly. The dash has a glove box on either side, glove box here and a glove box there, which some cars of the era did, and that's a configuration of the layout of the dash. When the car was new, it had all gauges, full amp, oil pressure, tachometer, speedometer, the normal stuff, all was included in this car. The wood that is at the bottom of these doors is actually how this car was actually made. That wood was put in there, for, later to stiffen things up, but that's more or less a replication of the original wood that should be in there from the original body. The car also has a full steel top, which full steel tops really didn't come into vogue until the 1937s, and the 1936 car actually had a full steel top as well. You could actually take this top, there's an insert in here, and you could, if anybody wanted to, you could take that insert out and put a soft top in there if you felt so inclined, but there's a separate piece, and it's screwed in and then let it in, and that gives, because they didn't have the technology to make the whole. So this car, 36, 37 Accords were front wheel drive. The earlier Accords were front wheel drive as well, but this model here was front wheel drive, similar to the Oldsmobile Toronado, which is why they took Accord apart to see kind of how they wanted to build an Oldsmobile Toronado. Right now, this car has got the original wheels on the back and the original axle on the back. The front end is a 37 Chevrolet straight axle front end on it now, and by coincidence or luck, it's the right, it fits exactly, it's the right width and everything, so if you were going to modify this car, you could quite easily use the 37 axle that's in there right now. So this car, originally from the factory, on the left hand side here, this casing here, that's where the battery was, and on the right hand side, that's where basically a storage compartment was, or tools or what have you. So, and that's basically the way it was made, and the cables went up to the front. On the back, it's there's a light on either side in the back headliner area, which I guess to some degree it was ahead of its time as well, because most cars of the era had a light basically just up in the center of the roof, and this one has two lights, one on each side, more or less like a limousine style. Here is the crank. Each window was individually controlled, one from the driver's side, one from the passenger side. You would simply crank this. It would, this winds up in a mechanism inside, and then as you cranked it, this thing would extend, and as you brought it back, it would go back in, and that's how you did the windows. All the doors function quite well, actually, for a car of this age. Opens and closes. As well, these cars were all basically handmade, so all the doors, each car was pretty much fitted separately. If you take a door from one car and move it to another car, you've got to do some alterations, because each car was made individually and shaved and added to fit the car exactly, because it was basically a non-production line car. It was basically a hand-built car.